And when you start speaking to yourself with that more precise and definitive language, it changes how you show up for yourself. But then think about how your clients and the people that you work with, it impacts how they see you. Well, Michael doesn't say he's going to try or attempt to do something. Michael says he will do something, and it gets done.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer. Today's show is going to be a very interesting one. With over 20 years in law enforcement as a detective, SWAT breacher, and supervisor, Justin brings leadership insight forged in high-stakes environments where precision, clear communication, and decisiveness are survival skills, not options. Justin Atherton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be here. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation.
I think so, and that's why I led with that. I mean, we don't get too often the mixing of law enforcement, SWAT, those sorts of things, high-stakes environments on our podcast, and I think it's a really interesting conversation we're going to have about your perspective of the world and what you've learned over your career. And what our listeners do on a day-to-day basis. So perhaps maybe give us a little background. Tell us how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so like you said, 20 years in law enforcement. I did all the cool guy stuff, right? Detective, SWAT team, all of that. And I started doing my own business about midway in my career. I realized that I needed to have something ready for that day that I was no longer in law enforcement. I learned some lessons in my career about attaching my identity to something that could be removed from me at any moment. And so I had to learn some hard lessons there. And so I started doing some coaching, started doing a lot of self-development on myself, also working with my clients one-on-one. What I started to see is that the leadership issues in law enforcement were not just in law enforcement. They show up in all different types of corporations, and it's not because the leaders aren't trying their best. It's because they haven't fixed their communication problems.
And that is across all industries. I would imagine, though, in law enforcement, it causes some severe issues having that not happening correctly.
Absolutely. Especially if it's on a critical incident. If we're not communicating clearly and with precision, people can get hurt. But when you look at it in corporations and in civilian businesses, no one's getting hurt, but there could be lost time, profits, all of these other aspects that businesses are losing money because they're not communicating with precision.
Absolutely. And I would imagine, so what's interesting though is that in law enforcement there's you mentioned and that I mentioned it in the bio, high stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we know there's high stakes in that organization or area of life, and yet the communication doesn't work. On the business side of things, small businesses, I'm sure the businesses that the listener owns that's listening today is not high stakes, and there's communication issues. Yet on both sides, they're not getting done correctly. Mm-hmm. And it's really curious is like what your take is on that, because you would think they would try and get that communication fixed in the law enforcement, and because it's high stakes, there's a lot of things that can happen. So what are the barriers that have that continue to be a problem?
Yeah, I've had this discussion with a lot of different leaders in different areas, and I think there's a misconception that communication skills can't be improved. It's like, well, this is just how I communicate, or I'm shy, I'm reserved, I don't like public speaking. And we don't train our leaders on how to communicate. We might talk about these concepts and these ideas, or you need to communicate more. Here are some concepts and abstract thoughts to think about, but we don't give people the tactical tools on how to communicate better and more clearly with each other.
Mm-hmm. And so when you've been looking at this, when do you see, like, are there signs of when you know someone's communicating clearly or not? Like, what are some of those things before we sort of get into the how this impacts our listener?
It's in the words. It's in the words that we choose to use on a regular basis. I talk about several aspects in my book. One of them I kind of touched on already, like conceptual abstract thoughts versus concrete and behavioral concepts. And this could be talking with customers, clients, if we are speaking in concepts, we each plug in our own definition of what those words are. It's like I could say something to you as I'm determined to get this done. What do you mean by determined? Are you going to work a lot of overtime to make sure that this is done, or are you going to cheat the system in some way? Like what is your definition of determined, right? Rather than saying what's the actual behavior I'm going to take. I'm going to have this done for you by 7 p.m.
Interesting. Very different. And yet, if you said one or the other at any given time, they would both be acceptable to me because we put the meaning in. Oh, that means you're going to have it done by 7 tonight. Because when you say determined, right? That's my understanding is you're going to get it done on the time that you said or that we've agreed on that it would be done, but it doesn't actually mean that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the second one is beautiful. It's clear. So this is big, and it comes across. I have young kids, so communication is always front and center of what we're doing all the time. And talking about is communication, and a lot of times not communicating very well, or feeling like it's not being communicated very well. But in business and all the way up the chain from being a kid to being an adult. And so how do we get ourselves into these places where, is it laziness? Is it just learned behavior? Because I know I do that. I'm thinking, I'm sure when I say, I have lots of ways of speaking where I might say some sort of a cliche or an analogy or a metaphor, which can be very powerful, but also very misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To your question about, is it laziness? Is it just, I think it's more accepted behavior and how we speak to each other. We're okay talking in these vague, abstract concepts, but then we wonder why, things don't get done to the standard that we expected. Because, well, I expect this done to a high degree. Well, what do you mean a high degree? Like what are we talking about here? So in leadership, we tend to assume that the other person shares our definition of these abstract thoughts, when most of the time we don't. I could ask 20 people in a room to define leadership, and I'm going to get 20 different answers. Because it's about the behavior that builds it. What is a good leader? It's someone who does A, B, and C.
Yeah. That's really powerful stuff. So you've been doing this a while, and we're talking here about businesses. You've gone from law enforcement, you went into personal development for yourself, and you started noticing this across. How have you seen it transform into actually helping businesses with their communication?
To me, it's interesting. I think it's accepted a lot easier outside of law enforcement. It seems that some law enforcement leaders have a pretty big ego and think that they don't need to correct some of their language. They think it's everyone else's problem, which creates its own issues.
Mm.
When I've worked with some different corporations or, some executives, they've implemented this pretty well within their own teams. And even in large organizations, to where maybe the whole company is not on the same page, the leaders that I've worked with directly have told me how they've been able to make an impact on their direct reports and how that starts to bleed out into other aspects of the company.
Yeah. Let's maybe talk about that from a bookkeeping perspective. I would imagine we've got clients. I mean, we think about communication often. We've just sort of been batting around with verbal communication, but there's communication in emails, communication, other forms of communication. I mean, maybe we'll stick, body language, tonality, all these different pieces. But in our world, we're mostly dealing with telephone calls, maybe some Zoom meetings, and also email communications. And bookkeepers we talk about the frustrations that they would have would be, they're dealing with business owners, busy business owners, and deadlines. Things need to happen on certain times, by certain times. They would also have direction that they would need to give to business owners because there's the data that's coming back and the information, and presenting that in a way that alters behaviors. Because if you've got this information and you can't alter a behavior or create a transformation with that information, it lacks in value. The value goes down. So communicating in a way that's impactful, like you're presenting here, could be really powerful for our listener.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a big point too, like especially in today's age, we communicate more via text, via email. And it's just as important to audit our language in those communications because we don't have the back and forth. So we have to be more concise and more precise with our language when it's in a digital manner, because we tend to lose people's attention very easily when we're communicating in that way. So it's very important to audit your language in your emails, in your text messages, in your any type of documents you're sending to people.
Absolutely. And those I'm just sitting here thinking AI has just become such an important piece of daily work. And often I'm using AI we have that opportunity. Like there's really no excuse. When you and I are talking, I'm talking, and it's like live, right? We're live television here.
Yeah.
But text messages and emails, that's like, there's a delay in broadcast. We can slow it down, make sure what we're communicating is done appropriately. And so it is in a way an opportunity. And I think AI helps. Like after thinking about this, it'd be like, I haven't done this before, but I've done it in other ways, which is tell me how I'm not doing this well. Have it be a critic and sort of say like, how am I not being clear? And I find that actually when we're building something, or we actually have to build something, and this applies directly to our bookkeeper and their clients. It's like their expectations and what they need to know and how much they need to know. It's like if you knew what they needed to know or what they are perceiving your communication as, it'd be really powerful. You could get a lot more done.
Absolutely.
So you've seen this happen. How do you start to have people change that behavior? Because I would imagine as you were talking, I'm like, wow, I'm probably doing this all the time myself. How do you start altering behaviors of people? Like we just talked about an instance there. I have time to alter that, but in a live conversation and when I'm speaking to my kids or to the rest of the people in my life, I'm just doing it the way I have that behavior. How do we interrupt it?
So I've created something called the wave method to help with this. And it helps with all aspects that we're talking about, live and anything digital. And the first thing is the words. We have to understand the words that we are using that undermine us, that cast doubt in our clients, that undermine the trust that we're trying to build with anyone that we're speaking with in a leadership role or client type situation. And I narrowed it down to a few categories of words. And this all comes from statement analysis or content analysis. So in the law enforcement world, we use this to determine the truthfulness and accuracy of written and spoken word. So as a detective, I used this to figure out if someone was being deceptive with me. And so I've narrowed it down to a few of these categories. And the one that's the most prevalent is called stop action verbs. So these are words such as try, want to, start to, plan to, meant to, love to. And I joke about it here in the South, we say fixin' to. And so all of these words imply a level of failure.
I'm sure in the South, though, fixin' to means it's going to get done if it's a barbecue or something like that, right?
I mean, there's still...
Fixin' to have a barbecue is pretty much a done deal.
Well, we're fixing to.
Yeah.
So, but think about this. I plan to start eating better, or I want to go to the gym today. We're giving ourselves a way out. We're giving ourselves a plan B. And we should be saying, I will do this. I am going to do this. And so you have to catch yourself in the moment, and that's the awareness piece. That's step 2 of the WAVE method. But before we move on to the awareness piece, what I find is I've had people come up to me after sharing this in a talk, because I do public speaking for different events. And sometimes I've had people come up to me and go, Justin, is it a big deal for us to say, I'll try or I plan to? We all talk like this. Isn't that normal? Yeah, it is normal for us to talk like that. And the challenge that I give anyone that doesn't think that this applies is I challenge you, and anyone listening right now, take this challenge as well. Walk up to your spouse and tell them, I'll try to be faithful to you.
Whoa, dear.
Or what about, I plan to be faithful to you?
Wow.
I meant to. Now we're getting really bad.
Yeah.
We don't want to go there.
I meant to. Oh boy.
So think about that. The only way that those statements are accepted is I will be faithful to you, or I am going to be faithful to you, or I promise to. And so why would we speak about our own goals or accomplishments or tasks that we need to take on with that same level of failure?
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
So the first step is the words, understanding the words that undermine.
And what did you call those words? Those were
stop action verbs.
Stop action verbs. And I kind of feel like I've heard that before, but it's stop action verbs. So why is it called stop action verbs? That's just the term for them?
Yeah, this was taken from the statement analysis courses I've been through in law enforcement.
Right, so they call that's a law enforcement technical stop action verb. So,
because if you think about it, well, I started to mow the lawn and then I went to the store. Well, did you ever finish mowing the lawn? What interrupted you? Where's this gap of time? What happened in this gap of time that interrupted you from completing the task?
Yes, stop action verbs. That's a very interesting one. Like it. Okay, so continue. So we've got that.
Okay. And so then there's a couple other categories of words as well that I explain in the book, but the awareness piece is big as well. Like you have to catch yourself in the moment. And so when I say something, even when I'm talking to myself in my head, and maybe I get out of bed in the morning, I say, yeah, I need to go to the gym today. And I go, no, I will go to the gym today. It changes how I behave. My brain, like our subconscious is always listening to us. You know, Jim Quick talks about this a lot in all of his content about like programming your subconscious on what you plan to do or like what you intend to do. And when you start speaking to yourself with that more precise and definitive language, it changes how you show up for yourself. But then think about how your clients and the people that you work with, it impacts how they see you. Well, Michael doesn't say he's going to try or attempt to do something. Michael says he will do something, and it gets done.
Powerful stuff. I just saw, it was an Instagram reel on Bruce Lee, and he was in an interview talking about how what we say to ourselves, the mind only understands what, even if you're kidding, it doesn't know the difference. And
Absolutely
so
true.
it's like, because the words, the spelling, he says words are words, or, you spell words, it's a spell. You're putting a spell on yourself. I thought it was a very interesting, and I never heard that before, spell as being spelling, spell, put a spell on your mind. But you're putting it in a much more clear framework, which is what we're telling ourselves. Those stop action verbs are powerful stuff that we're feeding ourselves every day, and we're stopping.
And then we wonder why we didn't accomplish things, or why our New Year's resolutions were done by February 1st.
Yeah. Jan 15.
Yeah, it's something bad. It's really bad
it's
now,
pathetic.
isn't it? Like it's 2 weeks or something.
Yes. It's not good. Yes. Or and I shouldn't even say that. It is what it is. But we can improve it.
There are stats out there.
Yeah, we can improve it with this technique. And it's what's beautiful about this kind of stuff is that it doesn't cost us anything but our own focus and energy.
And it does take that focus. That's the awareness piece, right? And catching yourself in the moment when you tell yourself, either in your head or out. Like when I'm talking to people and I say, yeah, I'll try to have that by the end of the week. No, I will have that to you by Friday.
It
changes how I behave.
So this is the W are the words, A is the awareness, and that's that key piece of what is like being aware of what you're actually saying. And are there the other ways to, like, obviously we're talking about it right now, I'm hyper aware of it, but is there a trigger that you use or that you get your clients, or that's in your book, around how do you get this going every day?
Yeah, I've had clients use a tally. Like they keep track of the words that they use. I had one client, he came back to me after about a week or so, and he's like, I have used kind of about 35 times in the last week.
Wow.
He's like, it's undermining all of my business conversations. Well, we kind of want to do this, and I'm kind of working on this. And he's like, I had to eliminate it. He's like, and then I started seeing myself be more productive, and I actually started seeing my clients see me in a different light.
Yes.
Because that trust is a very delicate thing. And everyone else hears the undermining language, whether they recognize it on a conscious level or not. Their subconscious is picking up on these undermining language. And so it creates trust issues when you use these with your clients, and they hear it and go, well, you're kind of doing this, you're trying to get this accomplished, and they feel it.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. And it brings up a question when you just said that, because there's the responsibility I'm taking to alter my own way of speaking in clarity. But then there's the other person speaking to me and getting to that clarity. And so if you were talking with a person that you're trying to, you're getting the facts from the people, and you're, as a detective, you're figuring it all out. There's sort of this client relationship in that scenario where you have the authority, and that's probably a piece that I think would be interesting for us to talk about, where a bookkeeper has to take that authority and might not feel comfortable with, oh, you just said you might get it done, or you're trying to get it done, or you hope to get it done. You're giving me these stop action words, pal. I can't get your stuff done. Right? So how do we help them? It would be powerful for them to do that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
There more deadlines would be met.
And it helps get everybody on the same page. So yeah, absolutely. When you hear someone else using this language, and And I get it. We're dealing with a client that we have to have them accomplish some goals, or they're paying us, right? And so like there's this dynamic. It's like, well, I heard you say you might get that done this week. Is there some other things in the way that is there anything I can help with to remove some obstacles so we can get this
Yes.
completed by Thursday at 4 p.m.? Let me hear what's getting in the way for you.
Yes. So it's a feel like that's like slowing things down and getting to some good clarity there. And that's a nice approach. And I think softened approach, which is, right,
You
that's
might?
pretty,
What do you mean you
what
might?
do you
Yeah.
want, right?
Don't be
That's gonna,
confrontational with it.
that's gonna be some, it might create a little bit of a reaction in the clients. But you're saying, you've heard this, it's like, oh, it sounds like this might be a problem. Can I help you? How can I help you? It's like turning it around to being supportive and in service of them, but still aiming to get to clarity and get those clear things that you need to hear. It'll be done by Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever.
Mhm.
And so that I think that's the pathway for our listeners and their clients, is that slowing it down and looking. We have to identify it and then also start to ask that question from a place of service.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you start hearing it more often. After you start editing yourself and really bringing that level of awareness to how you're speaking, you definitely pick up on others' language. And then you start getting curious. You're like, well, what do they mean by that? What does that look like for you? How can we accomplish that goal? Especially when you start hearing these abstract and these conceptual words. You're like, well, tell me more about that. Can you be more specific when you mean determined, or explain to me exactly what you mean by leadership, or whatever those concepts are that they're talking about.
Yes. And so in your book, you have lists of some of these words that would help people start to identify, because I think that's half the battle, if you will. There's one of my metaphors for you, is understanding and auditing themselves, right? What am I saying that's really, and I mean, you could use AI for that. Like I could plug that in, put some of my transcripts in and say, like, what am I saying all the time that's stop, action, verb.
Sure.
Help me identify those in my writing, in my podcast episodes, all that good stuff. There's a lot of power and opportunity there, but it'd be great with your book to be able to plug some of that into our brains to say, oh yeah, that's a word I use a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book goes into more detail about it. The stop, action, verbs, there's absolutes, and then the equivocations. Like those are the main
Perfect.
three categories of words that we see pop up, and that's what I do focus on in the book. You mentioned AI. I use AI quite often, but for a lot of idea generation and like, how should I word this? And I still find that even though I've plugged in quite a bit of data into AI on how I speak and all about the content analysis, that it still is not direct enough. It
Right.
still plugs
It's the
in
algorithm
words.
and it's the programming is there. It is, at the end of the day, a computer.
Yes.
And it's going to do stuff that it's been told to do and how to do it, and it's probably not going to be that direct with me unless I beat it with a stick. Tell it to tell
I
it to
have
tell
tried
me.
to beat it with a stick. I've tried to be like,
It does work
do
a little
not
harder when you do.
do not use these words, and it still somehow uses this vague conceptual language. I think, like you said, the programming is part of it, but again, it doesn't. It almost doesn't want to be so finite. And
Mhm.
so I find myself auditing it quite a bit when I'm wording maybe some different posts or some articles I'm writing, and I'm like, no, this we're not clear enough.
Yes.
Because that clarity is confidence, and when we're speaking, we need to make sure that the person that we're talking to has confidence in the words that we're using.
Yes, I think it's designed to give us a little feeling like we matter. It's like, oh look, I was helpful today. I actually told you, Mr. Smart AI, on how to do this better. It's like gives
Right.
us opportunities each day. But joking aside, it yes, and I think it's good to an extent, but we do have to remember we are the human and we are the ones that have the brilliance. It's the computer. Got to use it as a tool. Now, we've talked about a couple of things there that we started with WAVE. We got to W and A, words, awareness. V, did we hit V?
Not yet. So the V is verify. And so this is where it really falls into our emails, our text messages, any of the copy that we're sending out, whether it's a proposal or any type of communication. Like, I go back through and audit that multiple times, especially if it's going out to a large audience. If I'm sending this to 20, 100 people, I have to make sure that none of the words can be misinterpreted in my communication. And what I've seen is that we, especially in emails, we tend to put too much information in an email. You should never be covering more than 2, maybe 3 points in an email, because then you start losing attention and it's like, why am I even reading this? Like, I love starting with the point. Like, here is the point of this email. You may even say, I have 3 points for this email, A, B, C. And then you go into description about those.
And so with the V, that is the piece that is and help me with the word for the V. It's verify. Verify. Got it. So we're verifying that they're getting the communication.
Mm-hmm.
And that can
or
be
that
done.
that our end is crystal clear.
That we're verifying that we've spoken in a way that's crystal clear.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. And I just remembered there was there was 2 things that popped into my head actually as we were talking, and I was like, oh, we got talking. We were whenever I start joking around, I forget what I'm going to talk about. But I actually mentioned authority. Your authority, when you were a detective, you had kind of instant authority. In our society, definitely we could have a conversation about the erosion of authority in all aspects of civilization, right? Where things are eroding there. But there are places people have authority. And one of the themes that we have this year for our summit that we do every year in the fall, the Successful Bookkeeper Summit, is the theme of it is own your authority. And I think this conversation's really, I should be bringing it up in every episode because there's always an opportunity to own your authority and develop your authority as a bookkeeper in the industry. And it's good for promoting the summit because we want our listeners to come along. But in this situation, it's really clear that this kind of communication actually develops and harnesses and strengthens the perception of authority without taking authority. Like, it's not about going and grabbing the authority, taking the authority, forcing the authority. It's about owning your authority. This is a great opportunity to own your authority in the way you communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think authority and trust are kind of synonymous, right? It's
Yes.
like they're very strongly connected.
Yes,
and so
because someone would trust, this communication increases trust.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah,
it's like,
it's beautiful.
This person's speaking in a definitive way. I believe in their ability, in their competence to be able to follow through with this.
It's an interesting point, because you say when you spoke those 2 different ways about I forget what you were going to do, but you said, I might do it, and then I'm going to do it, or I will do it. Instantly, when people talk like that, you trust that what they're saying, they're going to do. And if you trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do, you probably trust that's just like, it's almost a subconscious, unconscious mechanism to just trust that someone's got it. It's like there's different times in my life where when we went on a sailboat, the captain, right, the way they communicated and did things, it was like instant authority and trust because they just got things done and took action and had things happen. So when you're speaking in that language, it's just developing trust and authority.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of goes into some, psychological aspects. Like, I think the halo effect would kind of go in there as well. If you're communicating in this clear and concise way, then you must do everything in that clear and concise way. And you can handle all of these things that come your way. So it does create that halo effect, which is like, hey, I trust him to do some other stuff that I've never even seen him do.
Yes, I like that. That's wonderful. So it's powerful stuff, and really a good opportunity to own your authority with this book and the content that you're talking about. I think it's nice. It's nice because it's a very fresh conversation, I feel, and the over 500 episodes I've done. This is a very fresh way of presenting it for our audience, which I like. Okay. And so again, we always say when we have authors on our show, get the book for yourself and then buy the book for a couple of your clients that you think would enjoy the book, and it would be powerful for you to gift that to your clients as a way of saying thanks and also supporting them and being the best version of their business selves. So we got to V, verify, and now is there an E? Or maybe it's just a way of shortened acronym.
Engage. So it's engaging with an accountability partner.
Okay.
And so and I find that this is the most powerful way to practice the WAVE method. So if you have a business partner, maybe your spouse, that you bring it up to them and say, hey, I need you to hold me accountable when you hear me use this language, these words here. When you hear me say try, I plan, I want to, point it out to me. And now you have to promise to not be offended. Like, because my wife does it to me sometimes. She's like, you're going to try? And I'm like, thank you, dear. I will do that. And gentlemen, I'll say, don't just use it on your spouse. Just like if they want to join the challenge, great. But don't just put it on someone. Be like, I heard you say try, I heard you say might. But asking someone else in your circle that you're comfortable with to point out when you use these words.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. So I'm sure my wife would love that. Are you? Yes. We're not doing that. We're not going there. So that's great. I love this. I love this topic, and I love the ease that can be applied. Not easy, but the ease that can happen here with moving just a few little notches on the dial to make a really big impact, get better clarity, and get more stuff done for yourself in your life, in your business, with your clients. And that's exciting stuff.
Yeah. And it almost builds this momentum with yourself. Like you create this self-confidence. When you start speaking to yourself with definitive language, you're like, I could do whatever I want. And then you start accomplishing these tasks and these goals within a short amount of time period, and it becomes a snowball effect.
Yeah. And what's interesting too, Charles Duhigg wrote a book called The Power of Habit. I think it's called The Power of Habit. Yeah, it's The Power of Habit. And it boiled down to the way to create the habit was a focus on one thing. One thing changes many. And I think Atomic Habits, I haven't read that book actually, James Clear. I should read that book. Everybody talks about it. But I know from talking to people, it's that one focus, change one thing, and that then has a ripple effect on others. This is a great one habit to focus on. You change the language, just that. Talk about the gym. I will go to the gym on this day by this time, and that you're going to increase your likelihood of getting to the gym, which change other habits. But if you just focus on the language, this one thing, that could change many things in your life that you have no idea that it'll impact. And I'm surprised actually that the language, I don't remember the language coming up in The Power of Habit as much, but it was a long time ago I read that book. But that wasn't a big piece that I remember. It was more about, these are the things you could do. whether it's, okay, I'm going to stop smoking, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm just going to, wear different running shoes. So hopefully I walk more, something like that. But the language here is a powerful lever to be pulling, and it's one that we'll have access to immediately.
Yeah. I find that most people focus on the behavior first. You should do this, X, Y, Z. These are the things to help change habits. But the language precedes that. How you speak to yourself, how you talk about your own goals and aspirations and dreams, that precedes the action and behavior. So while the action and behavior are very important, how you speak about your intent to accomplish those things, that's first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I think this really has that power, is it does proceed, and it can have such a massive effect on just about everything you do, just by changing the language.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more about the book, and I might imagine we get it on Amazon is a good place to go, or other places.
Yeah.
But do you have a website or other resources that our listener can go and check more things out on?
Absolutely. So yeah, for anybody listening to this that's a leader or business owner, and your communication isn't getting the results it should, it's probably more of a clarity issue. And that's a lot what the book really focuses on. And the book is titled How to Get to the Damn Point.
Ooh.
And I just found out today, so you're the first person to hear this, Michael, that it just hit the bestseller list on Amazon. And so just heard that from the publisher about an hour ago. So
Congratulations. That's amazing. Hold up the book again. I love the title, and I love the way you built the title page. That is one damn good looking book.
it's
How to
to
get
the point.
get to the damn point.
And it's a short read. It's only about 135 pages, 10 chapters, and it's very direct and to the point, and gives the reader some tactical tools on how to apply improving their language and how they communicate with their teams. And so, besides Amazon, you can also find me on my website, which is justinwatherton.com, and find some more information about me on there as well.
Okay. We will have those links in the show notes to get there. This has been absolutely fantastic. I think the book offers a whole bunch of opportunity for us, but also the fact that it's short is an even bigger opportunity for us to get to the point and actually start using some of this in our lives. And so I'm going to be buying the book. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be buying this book. And so thank you, listeners. We hear all the time from listeners and authors that have been on the show that our audience supports these concepts, and as a thank you, go and buy the books and use them, because they're all books that are valuable to being the best version of your business self, right? And life as well, included in that. So Justin, this has been absolutely a fantastic conversation. I feel like I have some clarity myself on just a few things, and I'm going to implement Wave today. And so thank you for being on the show and bringing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love the conversation, and I love the questions that you asked. And I'm gonna follow up with you, Michael. In about 30 days, I'm gonna be like, "How's it going? How is that language changing the things
Please
that you're doing?"
Well, an update for listeners. I had another guest on we were talking about networking, and a very, very different way of thinking about networking, and he had inspired me in the show. And literally, I got off the episode where we recorded it, and I did exactly what I had told him I was going to do, which was to reach out to a mentor of mine from like 20 years ago. I probably haven't spoken to him in a good 20 years, which is crazy. It seems like yesterday, but I called him up and I just thanked him, and it was a really interesting conversation, and I approached it the exact way that the author suggested, which was just call him to thank him. Like, nobody gets called to just be thanked. And I'm like, yeah, I don't get many of those calls. And so I did it. And he was like, it blew up his brains. Like he first of all, he's like, well, why are you calling him? I'm just calling him thank you. He's like, what? And then he texting me and he's like, I can't believe you did that. This has made my day, my year. Like, it was beautiful stuff. So that's the gift of having people like yourself on the show, is that it really does make a difference for people. And I know it will make a difference for me. So thank you. Please follow up. And that'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I really appreciate the conversation, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.